The morning Dr. Varela told me to call the police. I was standing barefoot in a puddle of warm bath water, holding a sponge over my wife's motionless shoulder. He looked me straight in the eye and said it quiet, almost trembling, "Sir Turner, call the police." That sentence split my world clean in half. My name's Kevin Turner, 52 years old, born and stuck in a dying Rust Belt town called Brenton, Ohio, the kind of place where the factories rust faster than people retire. For 6 years, my whole life had been wrapped around the woman lying in that hospital bed in my living room, Evelyn. Every morning started the same way, water steaming in the portable tub, oatmeal buzzing in the blender, the smell of antiseptic fighting the smell of old carpet. My body ached from another night sleeping in that recliner that squeaks every time I breathe. 6 years of that sound squeak, sigh, whisper, repeat. Morning, sweetheart. I'd tell her as if she could answer. Tuesday, full bath day. Her eyes always found mine. 1 blink meant yes, 2 meant no. That was our code, our only language left. I used to be a craftsman, built custom cabinets, did decent work before the accident. But after that night, the shop went dark, the bills stacked high, and I became a nurse, janitor, cook, and mourner all in one skin. They told me a truck ran a red light. Evelyn was walking home from rehearsal. She'd been teaching kids modern dance. She loved movement, the kind of woman who could fill a room just by breathing. When they said she'd never move again, I thought the world had stopped. The guilt's a living thing. I was out of town on a contract job that night. I should have been there. If I'd been there, maybe that truck, maybe something I stopped thinking about it years ago. Guilt's a loop. It eats you if you let it. The room's a museum of routine now, the towels folded in the same order, the soap unscented, doctor approved, lined up like soldiers. The thermometer, the ointment, the remote to tilt her bed. Everything I could control, so the things I couldn't wouldn't crush me. While I bathed her that morning, the radio mumbled old soul songs. Evelyn's eyes followed the ceiling fan blades, slow and distant. I talked just to fill the air. 27th anniversary next month, I said. You remember the church bells, huh? 1 blink. Yes. Maybe I'll bring Father John over again. 2 blinks. No. Okay, I smiled. No sermons today. Her lips twitched what used to be her smile. I took that as enough. Around 9, the phone buzzed. Hector, her cousin, left another voicemail, some investment opportunity for her medical fund. I deleted it before the message ended. Then Monica, my sister, texted, "You can't keep doing this alone, Kev. Think about a facility. Please." And the third voice, the one I ignored, was from Marcus Fields, the family lawyer, calm, precise, saying he needed signatures about Evelyn's trust. Everyone wanted something, money, control, a decision. Me, I just wanted one morning without fear of losing her. After breakfast, I noticed a bottle on the nightstand, white plastic label half rubbed off. I didn't remember seeing it before. I lifted it, shook it. Pills rattled inside, pale yellow, smaller than what the doctor prescribed. "Eve," I said softly, "these yours?" Her eyes snapped to mine, wide alarmed. Then she blinked. Once. "Yes." "Did Dr. Varela change the meds?" 2 blinks. "No." Her eyes began to flutter fast, off pattern like panic in Morse code. All right, I whispered, tucking the bottle in my pocket. "We'll ask the doctor. No one's changing anything without me knowing." I told myself she was just anxious, but there was something in her gaze that made my chest tighten, fear, pure and sharp, like she wanted to scream but couldn't. By noon, the weather turned bitter. Gray sky pressing down on the town snow, half melted on the curb. I wrapped Evelyn in her thick blue blanket, lifted her gently into the wheelchair, and wheeled her out to the van. Her head leaned against the scarf I'd tied to keep her neck steady. At the hospital, everything smelled of disinfectant and coffee. Nurses nodded at me, some pity, some admiration. I hated both. Dr. James Varela, mid-60s, white hair, pulled back neatly, had been with us since the beginning. A man of routines himself, he greeted me with a tired smile. "How's our fighter doing?" he asked, glancing at Evelyn's chart. "Same as always, still blinking at me like I talk too much." He chuckled, motioned me toward the hallway. We'll run the usual tests. Might take a while. No rush, I said, handing him the unmarked pill bottle. Found this on her nightstand. Didn't recognize it. His brows knitted. Who prescribed this? That's what I was hoping you'd tell me. He turned the bottle in his hand, squinting. You wait here. I sat in the waiting area, that god-awful elevator music playing, watching snow fall outside the tall glass window. I kept hearing the hiss of Evelyn's breathing from memory, like it was stitched into my ears. Minutes stretched. Nurses passed. I scrolled through my phone, more messages from Monica, another from Hector urgent about the fund. All vultures circling the same carcass. After an hour, I started pacing. My back hurt, shoulder stiff. Then the door opened. Dr. Varela stepped out, holding the bottle in one hand, the other trembling slightly. His face was pale, too pale for a man who'd seen everything. Doctor, I asked. He looked past me, scanning the hallway like he expected someone to be listening. Then he leaned close. Mr. Turner, he said quietly, I need you to stay calm. Is Evelyn okay? He hesitated. Please call the police. The words hit me harder than any truck ever could. Excuse me, call the police, he repeated, his voice shaking now. Right now. My throat went dry. What are you saying? He swallowed, eyes darting toward the exam room. Just make the call, Mr. Turner, and don't under any circumstances speak to anyone from your wife's family until you do. I felt everything around me slow, like time itself was holding its breath. Doctor, if something happened. He shook his head once. Please, call them. He turned and disappeared back into the room before I could move. Through the small glass window, I saw two nurses rush to Evelyn's bedside. Machines beeped faster. The hallway suddenly felt miles long. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Is she dying? Is she in danger? Who did this? But my voice wouldn't work. The word police echoed in my head over and over until it didn't sound like English anymore. I looked down at my pocket where that pill bottle sat, label smudged, unfamiliar. I could still feel Evelyn's terrified eyes from earlier, the way she blinked, yes, no, yes, like trying to warn me of something I refused to see. Outside the window, the snow had stopped. The streetlights flickered on one by one, spreading pale orange halos across the parking lot. I dialed 911, my hand trembling so bad I almost dropped the phone. When the dispatcher answered, all I could manage was, my wife. Something's wrong with my wife. And as I spoke the truth, whatever it was already crawling its way toward me. Fear didn't arrive like a scream. It slid in on the back of routine, quiet as steam over bathwater. 6 years of the same motions had trained my body. I'd wake before dawn to the sound of that recliner complaining squeak at the hinge, a little Groa Evelyn used to move like music. Contemporary dancer, she could pull a story out of thin air with just her shoulders. There were trophies in boxes, programs signed by kids who wrote, Miss Eve changed my life. After the accident, the town turned her into a monument with a blanket over it, folks at the deli whispering, she's the one, right? The dancer neighbors brought casseroles the first year. Then thoughts and prayers the second, then silence long after that. Only Tom Reynolds from across the street kept showing up, a retired machinist with big hands and a small garden. He'd shovel our walk, drop off tomatoes, and say things like, you're a stubborn man, Kev, that's both your halo and your hazard. Money leaked out of us the way heat leaks out of old windows. Insurance fought me over everything that wasn't nailed to a policy. The city raised our property taxes, utilities went up, and the shop I used to run, the one with my name on the glass, sat dark except for Saturdays when I'd take a few orders just to remind my hands they were good for something besides lifting. Monica, my sister, called every week like clockwork. You can't keep doing this alone, she'd say. There are facilities. Good ones, skilled care. This isn't giving up, it's being smart. It's being someone else's problem. I'd answer and then hate myself because she didn't deserve my bite. She was trying to help, or that's what I told myself. The first crack wasn't loud. It was a flutter. Rosa Evelyn's sister showed up one afternoon wearing the same perfume she wore in high school, something sweet that didn't know when to quit. Rosa had the kind of smile that came with paperwork. She hugged me not long enough to mean it and walked straight to Evelyn with a practiced softness in her voice. "Hola, M," she cooed, using the nickname only family had earned. "You look beautiful today." Evelyn's lashes lowered and lifted in a slow yes. Rosa turned to me and opened a leather folder like a magician papers fanned out. "I brought some documents, nothing scary, just routine for the house. We should, make sure everything's in order considering." Considering what I asked. She didn't answer. She placed tabs with neon flags where she wanted signatures, fingers tapping the lines like drummers. The pages were stamped notarized, lined with that legal grammar that sounds like English, until you need it to be. I felt sweat forming at the back of my neck. Rosa was talking something about co-ownership streamlining tax advantages, but all I could hear was the quiet in the room under her words. Evelyn's eyelashes fluttered again, but different too quick, like a bird hitting glass. I'd never seen that rhythm before. I knelt down to meet her eyes. "You okay, Evie?" I asked. "Blink once for yes." She blinked once, then twice, then once again, a stutter step that didn't fit our code. Rosa rested a hand on my shoulder. It was meant to be reassuring. It wasn't. "If you want Kev, I can leave the packet and come back later," she said. "No pressure." I told her I'd look it over. She kissed Evelyn's temple and left the folder on the coffee table like it belonged to the room. After she was gone, I picked up the papers and read until the words turned to soup. Something about power of attorney for certain real property decisions. My signature appeared on a page I didn't remember signing, familiar, but off like an impersonation of my own name. That night, Hector called. Cousin by marriage, not by blood, slick hair, slick suits, ideas slick enough to slide right past your better judgment if you didn't nail them down. He'd sniffed out the trust Evelyn's late uncle had set up years ago, strictly medical tight as a drum. "Kev Hermano," he said, voice oily with charm. "You're breaking yourself. We could get a wing named after her, Turner Rehabilitation, state of the art. I know a clinic in Chicago, top tier. Let me help you move that money where it does more than pay for oatmeal." "It pays for her," I said. "And I'm not moving anything." "Don't be stubborn. There's leverage here. A good manager could grow the fund while she rests in—" "Don't say rests, Hector." He paused just long enough to let me hear the smile disappear. "Think about it." I hung up and stared at my hands. Tom knocked just then, as if the universe had sent me a shepherd. "Brought you soup," he said, holding up a pot wrapped in a towel. "And no, I won't take no for an answer." He stayed long enough to change the light bulb over the sink and tell me his back hurt in new and interesting ways. He glanced at the papers on the coffee table but didn't touch them. "You trust them?" he asked. "I want to," I said. "That count," he grunted. "Trust is a credit card with no fraud protection, buddy. Watch your statements." The next morning, routine dressed itself and walked me around the room again, but my head was off its axis. I picked up the white bottle from the nightstand, the one with the smudged label I didn't recognize. Smaller pills, pale yellow. The cap was child-proof, but not Kevin-proof. I counted 32. I didn't know what the number meant, only that it made my skin prickle. When I lifted the bottle, Evelyn's gaze snapped sharp as a switch. One blink. Yes, two blinks, no, then rapid fire, no, 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 and a soft sound in her throat, like a swallowed cry. "Okay," I whispered, pocketing it. "Okay." Around noon, Monica showed up with coffee and the face she wears when she thinks I'm drowning. "Don't get mad," she said before I could open my mouth. I toured a place, Oak Ridge Care. "It's clean, Kev. They do transfers with 2 techs 24/7 respiratory. You could sleep." "I sleep." I lied. "On that squeaky torture device." She looked towards Evelyn, softened. "Sweetheart, I'm not trying to replace you," she told her as if Evelyn were the one stopping me. "I'm trying to keep him standing." Evelyn blinked once, then slowly again. Yes, yes, or maybe she was just tired. Monica touched my arm. You can love someone and also let professionals do the heavy lifting, she said. Both things can be true. After she left, Rosa texted, "I'll swing by later, just a couple signatures." Real quick. My chest tightened. I should have said no. I said fine. The afternoon light turned the room the color of weak tea. Snow hissed on the windows. Rosa arrived in a coat that cost more than my van. She sat near Evelyn, lowered her voice to that sugar register that makes everything sound kind. Even the word foreclosure would sound like a lullaby if she were the one saying it. I brought the papers. She murmured, eyes on Evelyn, not me. Only a few. At the word papers, something in Evelyn changed. Her eyes didn't just blink, they withdrew, like a tide sucking back from shore, leaving everything on the sand to stink in the sun. Her lashes fluttered fast, nervous, then stopped, glazed, like she was staring through Rosa at something behind her. I glanced at her hand resting on the sheet. For 6 years, those fingers lay quiet as carved ivory. Now the ring finger twitched, once small as a secret. I moved between them. "Let me read," I said, taking the folder. "No one signs anything today." Rosa's smile didn't crack. "Of course, Kev. You're the captain." Her gaze flicked to Evelyn, then to my pocket, as if she could see through denim. "How's she doing on the new meds?" "What new meds?" The question came out harder than I meant. Rosa blinked. "Oh, I assumed Dr. Varela had never mind." She stood, smoothed her coat. "Tomorrow then," when the door closed behind her, the room exhaled. Evelyn's eyes found mine again, sharp, pleading. I took out the bottle and held it where she could see. Her breathing hitched. She blinked, a panicked rhythm. "No, no, no," then one long yes, like a confession. Her fingers trembled again, not a spasm, a message. Every cell in my body stood up. The first fear had arrived, and it wasn't for me, it was coming off her in waves. I wanted to pretend I didn't understand, to crawl back into the safety of routine and shut the door. But I was raised to look at a thing straight on, even if it scares you. "I'm taking this to the doctor," I said, voice steadying as I heard it. "Tomorrow morning." Her lashes settled, then blinked once, yes, and the relief in that single blink nearly buckled me. I put the papers in a drawer, hid the bottle in my jacket, and sat on the edge of her bed until the room got dark and our breaths learned how to match again. When the furnace kicked on and the vents rattled, I stared into the hallway and said it out loud so I'd have to keep my word. "Tomorrow," I told the house. "We're done guessing." By the time night settled over Brenton, the folder Rosa had left sat on my kitchen table like a live wire. I hadn't touched it all day. I'd spent the afternoon feeding Evelyn, checking her vitals, anything to delay opening that leather-bound trap. But the thing about dread is it doesn't fade if you ignore it. It breeds in silence. I poured myself half a glass of bourbon, the cheap kind that tastes like penance, and finally flipped the first page. Legal language marched down the paper in tight black rows. Power of attorney. Effective 3 months ago. My signature perfect, too perfect, slanted across the bottom. I studied it the way a man studies a crime scene. The pen stroke on the K was wrong. I never looped it that high. And the date, April 14th, was the week I'd been in the ER for dehydration after working 48 hours straight. Evelyn had been home alone that weekend, supposedly under Rosa's care. My stomach tightened. The next page listed Rosa Alvarez as co-trustee and co-executor for the Turner Family Trust. The language was polished, full of terms that sounded official: irrevocable trust, fiduciary oversight, medical disbursement authority. I'd seen enough contracts in my working days to know when someone was hiding behind jargon, but this wasn't my area. I reached for my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found Marcus Fields, the family attorney Evelyn's uncle had always trusted. The man's voice came on slow and measured. Southern vowels stretched thin by decades of law school. "Kevin, I was just about to call you," he said. "Been getting some strange inquiries about the Alvarez Trust." "The what?" he sighed. "Robert Alvarez, the uncle, set up a medical care trust before he passed. Irrevocable. $3 million to be used solely for Evelyn's medical treatment, supervised by a neutral trustee. You and I co-sign on any withdrawals. The money can't be diverted without both approvals. I've never signed off on a single transfer. That's why I'm calling. Someone's been trying to move funds, wire requests through a shell account in Cincinnati. They've been rejected so far. But the audit flags keep piling up. I was about to reach out when you rang. The world seemed to tilt sideways. And you're saying Rosa's name came up. She's been contacting the bank pretending to act as co-trustee. But Kevin, here's the catch. She produced a notarized document naming her as joint fiduciary with your signature. I closed my eyes. I've got that paper in front of me. Destroy it, Marcus said sharply. And Kevin, if anyone shows up asking about the fund, you call me first. The Alvarez family's been circling that money since Robert's funeral. Don't let them smell fear. When I hung up, the bourbon felt like lead in my gut. I looked at my signature again, clean, confident, a better version of me. Whoever forged it knew my hand. How many forms had Rosa brought over the years, routine stuff I'd signed between feeding schedules and hospital visits? How many times had I trusted a pen over instinct? The thought crawled under my skin and stayed there. The next morning I called a name I hadn't said aloud in years, Lena Ortiz. She'd been a cop before she went private, half legend, half rumor. 48 sharp as a tack, all business. She'd helped Tom's son once after a union dispute turned ugly, and Tom had said, if you ever need the truth dug up without the cops ruining it, call Ortiz. She picked up on the second ring. Ortiz Investigations. Lena, it's Kevin Turner. You don't know me, but I need help. Quiet help. Quiet costs extra, she said dryly. What's the job? I told her everything. The trust, the forged papers, the pills. She listened without interrupting except for the click of her pen now and then. I'll start with the trust trail, she said finally. Bank records, property filings, and you said there's medical stuff too. Yeah, my wife's been paralyzed for 6 years. Something's off. Who's her doctor? James Varela. There was a pause. That name rings a bell. I'll look into him too. You'll hear from me in a day. True to her word, Lena showed up the next evening with a folder thicker than my patience. She wore a brown leather jacket that looked older than either of us and carried herself like she'd seen every kind of lie. I ran your wife's name through hospital records, she said. You know, there's a nurse listed on her early files, Laura Benitez, that just disappears from the system 5 years ago. I frowned. Disappears. Like she never worked there. No payroll record, no HR file. But I found her signature on medication logs. Your wife signed the first year. After that, poof. My pulse quickened. And Rosa was around that time too. Bingo. The appointment scheduling changed around then. Someone else started calling in for your wife's checkups, adjusting times, canceling tests. Most calls came from a prepaid cell tied to Rosa Alvarez. She laid out a printed record of call logs. Rows and rows of timestamps. I can't prove intent yet, she said, but someone's been managing your wife's care behind your back. Might be worth asking Dr. Varela, who authorizes prescriptions these days. Her eyes softened. You look like hell, Mr. Turner. Be careful who you trust. The next morning, I tucked the smudged pill bottle into my jacket and drove Evelyn to the hospital. Snow turned to slush under the tires. My thoughts were a storm of names. Rosa, Hector, Marcus, Laura, each one another crack in the life I thought I'd built on devotion. Dr. Varela greeted me in his usual calm, the lines around his eyes deeper than last week. Morning, Kevin. What brings you in early? I found this, I said, placing the bottle in his hand. Evelyn's been acting different. You ever prescribe these? He squinted at the label, rubbed it with his thumb. No, where did they come from? Her sister left them here. I think. I'm not sure anymore. He nodded slowly. I'll run tests. Bring her in tomorrow. Full workup. Blood panels, neuro checks. We'll get to the bottom of it. His tone was steady, but his eyes weren't. He excused himself and stepped into the hallway. Through the glass, I saw him turn the bottle under the light, reading something invisible on the plastic. His jaw tightened. When he came back, his voice was quieter, almost shaking. These are benzodiazepines, he said. High grade, but the dosage, it's controlled almost surgically. Enough to suppress motor response, but not kill. Whoever's been giving these knows exactly what they're doing. He looked at me the way people look at a fuse about to blow. Mr. Turner, he said, call the police. The same words, the same tone. Everything in me froze. Behind him, the reflection of the pill bottle caught the fluorescent light, bright, clean, and cold. I remembered Evelyn's terrified blinks, the forged signature, the missing nurse. This time I didn't argue. I just nodded. Somewhere inside that hospital, a truth was waking up, and when it did, it was going to tear through everything I'd thought was safe. I sat in the hospital waiting room staring at a coffee cup that had gone cold an hour ago. The rim had a perfect ring of beige scum untouched. Somewhere beyond the swinging double doors, they were running tests on Evelyn machines, humming paper printing people calling codes in the distance. Every sound felt personal. The chair under me was too small for 6 years of exhaustion. I'd spent that long believing in her stillness, polishing it like a faith. Now, sitting there under the sterile light, I realized I didn't even know what kind of truth I was afraid of anymore, that she'd been sick or that she hadn't. I must have dozed off because when Dr. Varela returned, I didn't hear him approach. The shuffle of his shoes snapped me awake. His face was pale, drawn tight like a man who'd just looked into the sun too long. Kevin, he said quietly. We finished the first round of tests. You should come with me. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Fluorescent lights pulsed above monitors, beeped from every room. We stopped outside a glass window where I could see Evelyn lying on the bed, electrodes on her skin, a tech adjusting wires along her legs. What are you testing? I asked. EMG electromyography, measures muscle activity. It'll show if her paralysis is real or chemically induced. He glanced at the monitor. Lines jumped alive. Those spikes you see, those are voluntary motor unit potentials. They only appear when the brain tells a muscle to move. My throat tightened, but she can't move. Her spinal cord shows no lesions, no nerve damage. MRI's clean. There's no muscle atrophy either, none that would fit 6 years of total immobility. Her muscles have been used recently. He let that sink in before continuing. Kevin, someone's been giving her small doses of benzodiazepines for years. Just enough to keep her docile, unresponsive, but alive. The toxicology shows periodic dips, likely timed before her checkups. So every time I brought her here, I couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Varela nodded slowly. The dosage would have dropped right before the appointment, making her appear consistent with paralysis. It's deliberate, calculated. I leaned against the wall. My knees didn't trust me. He spoke gently. I've seen neglect, even cruelty. But this is methodical. She's been maintained like a living prop. I wanted to vomit. For 6 years I'd been her caretaker protector. Now I wasn't sure if I'd been her jailer. A woman entered the corridor, then badge clipped to her belt. Detective Aisha Carter, tall, mid-40s, dark skin, eyes that missed nothing. She wore her empathy like armor, visible, but never soft. Mr. Turner, she asked, voice calm. I'm Detective Carter Brenton, PD. Dr. Varela briefed me on the situation. I'd like to ask a few questions, but first, how are you holding up? I almost laughed. How do you think? She didn't flinch. I think you've had the ground pulled out from under you. That's not easy. She motioned toward an empty office. Inside, she laid out her notepad. When did you first notice irregularities with her medication? This week, I said, handing her the bottle. Found these by her bed. Label was smudged. She examined it, nodding. Benzodiazepines, controlled substance, hard to get without prescriptions. Rosa, her sister. She's been handling paperwork, maybe appointments. Hector too, cousin. Both kept pushing to help manage her trust fund. Detective Carter wrote down the names, her face unreadable. You said there's a trust. Yes. Set up by her uncle. Marcus Fields manages it. Rosa forged my signature on a power of attorney. Do you have that document at home? Good. Don't touch it again. We'll need to secure your property. My head spun.
Secure it. Until we know who's behind this, your home's a crime scene, Turner.
She said it gently, but the word crime landed like a blow. Dr. Varela returned a few minutes later, motioning me into Evelyn's room. She was awake now, eyes open, more awake than I'd seen her in years. They tracked movement fast and deliberate. I moved closer, afraid to speak. "Evelyn," I whispered. Her gaze flicked toward me, and then, God help me, her hand shifted. A small, purposeful squeeze around my fingers. It wasn't random. It was the same move I'd tried to teach her years ago during therapy, the one she'd never managed before. My breath hitched. She just... Dr. Varela nodded slowly. Awed. Her motor response is returning. The drugs are wearing off. Detective Carter leaned closer, voice soft but urgent. "Mrs. Turner, if you can understand me, blink twice." 2 blinks. The detective's demeanor shifted instantly from cautious to controlled urgency. She turned to the doctor. "We need a quiet room, secure access, no visitors, and a team at the Turner residence. Now." Dr. Varela nodded. "I'll notify security." She turned to me. "Mr. Turner, we'll take care of her, but I need you to cooperate. No calls to family, no texts, no warnings. Whoever did this may still be watching." The world narrowed to that single instruction. "Don't call anyone." "Do you understand?" she asked. I nodded numbly. She softened her tone. "We'll send officers to your house to collect evidence. You can accompany them. Bring any documents, medication, or personal items that seem out of place." By the time we reached my driveway, dusk had swallowed Brenton. 2 patrol cars idled at the curb, engines humming. Inside the house felt wrong, too quiet, too orderly. Everything I'd done to keep her alive now looked like evidence. An officer with latex gloves sifted through drawers while I packed a small bag. My hands worked automatically, clothes, toiletries, Evelyn's blanket. "Mr.
Turner, one of them called. We found something." He held up a small brass key the size of a dime, worn smooth at the edges. "It was in your sock drawer." "You know what it opens?" I shook my head. "Never seen it before." He slipped it into an evidence bag. "Might be important." Another officer called from the guest room. "Sir, you should see this." Under the bed sat a dusty old suitcase I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as we pulled it out. The latches squealed open. Inside were scattered documents, an old flip phone, and a bracelet silver with a cracked turquoise stone. I knew it instantly. "Sarah's," I whispered. "My sister's. The one who disappeared 2 years ago. Beneath it, photos grainy, cruel. Sarah tied to a chair, and next to her, smiling faintly at the camera, were Rosa and Hector. My vision blurred. The room tilted. The sound in my ears was a roar. Detective Carter's voice came from far away, steady but hard. "Mr. Turner, we're going to need to take all of this. It's evidence now. Evidence." I stared down at the bracelet in the officer's gloved hand, the last piece of my sister. The first proof that everything I'd believed about family was about to collapse. The world I'd built around devotion had just cracked open, and inside it was rot. The sound of latex gloves snapping echoed through my house like gunshots. Every drawer, every cabinet I'd organized around caregiving was now being dismantled under blue-gloved hands. My life was no longer private. It was evidence. Detective Aisha Carter moved with calm precision, speaking low into her radio, while officers photographed the guest room. I stood in the doorway, numb, watching them work. The old suitcase sat open on the bed. Under harsh light, its contents looked even worse. The photos printed on glossy paper were spread across the comforter. My sister, Nina Alvarez, bound to a chair, her face, swollen eyes open and terrified. And beside her, posing like tourists at a crime scene, Rosa and Hector smiling. My chest burned. The human mind does strange things when it can't handle pain. Mine decided this had to be fake, some kind of staged setup. But the bracelet, the turquoise one I'd given Nina for her 26th birthday, was sitting right there in an evidence bag, cracked and darkened from wear. It wasn't fake. It was history bleeding through. "Mr. Turner," an officer said gently.
You might want to step back. Detective Carter held up an old flip phone with gloved fingers. We're cataloging everything. This device was in the suitcase. Battery's almost gone, but we've pulled the SD card. She turned to the forensic tech. Metadata. The tech nodded grimly. Timestamps match 2 years ago. GPS embedded in the photos puts them near Route 19, just outside Canton, abandoned property registered under a shell company named Alvacorp Holdings. Alvacorp, Carter repeated. Derivative of Alvarez, maybe. Could be. The company dissolved 18 months ago. All its accounts rerouted through a Cayman intermediary. My head spun. You're saying Rosa and Hector? My wife's family set up a company. Likely for money laundering, she said quietly. We'll know more once financial crimes digs in. I wanted to shout to break something, but all I managed was a whisper. That's my sister in those photos. I know, Carter said softly, and now we know who took her. She made a call crisp and professional. Dispatch. This is Carter. I need warrants issued for Rosa Alvarez and Hector Alvarez. Charges include kidnapping, aggravated assault, conspiracy, and financial fraud. Flag all ports of exit. Notify state and federal agencies. I heard my phone buzzing. Monica, my sister, again. I showed Carter the screen. Don't answer, she said firmly, until we rule out leaks. No family contact. We've seen operations like this reach deep into law enforcement and the courts. Be careful. That word leaks hung heavy.
By evening, Marcus Fields called from his office. His tone was low urgent. I heard what was found, he said.
Kevin, you need to tread carefully. Carefully. They kidnapped Nina. They've been drugging my wife for 6 years. I know, but this web goes higher than Rosa and Hector. The documents Evelyn's father left, the ones tied to the trust. They name city officials, a federal judge, even a bank auditor. If Carter pushes this case too fast, she'll be stepping on powerful toes. Are you telling me to back off? I'm telling you not to trust everyone who wears a badge, he said grimly, and keep copies of everything. If it disappears, you'll know why. The call ended with static. For the first time, I realized the phone in my hand felt heavier than the pistol I kept locked in the garage safe. Back at the hospital, the air smelled of disinfectant and dread. Evelyn's room was dim except for the heart monitor's steady green pulse. She looked different awake behind her exhaustion. The fog was lifting, but what lay underneath wasn't peace. It was fear. She saw me and blinked once slowly. Her fingers twitched toward mine. I sat beside her, voice shaking. They found Nina's bracelet, her photos. Tears welled in her eyes. She tried to speak, her throat raw from years of silence. The words came out as air at first, then formed shapes my brain barely caught. Nina, she whispered. I leaned closer. Yes, Nina. What happened to her Evie? Her lips moved again, slow trembling. They kept her. For what? Her eyes filled with pain, deeper than any medication could numb. She forced the next words out like confession. For the baby. The monitor beeped faster, her breathing hitching. What baby? I asked, my heart pounding. She couldn't finish. She turned her head, tears spilling. Before I could press her, my phone vibrated on the tray beside the bed. A new message from Monica lit the screen. I'm coming. Don't do anything until I get there. My stomach turned to ice. Monica wasn't supposed to know where I was. Detective Carter hadn't told anyone. I looked at Evelyn, her eyes wide, blinking fast, warning again. The phone buzzed a second time. Another message appeared. We need to talk about Nina. The letters blurred, and all I could hear was the echo of Evelyn's whisper in my head, for the baby. Somewhere outside that hospital room, the world was closing in. They were moving Evelyn that night. Detective Carter said the hospital wasn't safe anymore. Too many ears, too many hands in the wrong pockets. We'll take her to a federal safe facility near Columbus, she told me. You'll ride with us, 2 unmarked vehicles, armed escort. It was close to midnight. The corridors glowed that sterile blue of sleeping hospitals. Evelyn sat in a wheelchair, wrapped in her old blue blanket, eyes clearer now, though fear still clung to her like static. She could move her fingers, could whisper my name. It should have been a victory. It felt like a countdown. The detectives' team double-checked the route, the van, the credentials. The elevator hummed as we descended into the parking garage. I held Evelyn's hand the whole way. My shoulder still ached from where she'd squeezed it earlier, a good kind of pain proof that she was alive, fighting. Then the sound that changed everything, Kevin. Her voice cut through the concrete echo like a hymn. Monica, my sister, standing by the open garage door, breathless hair, messy coat, half-buttoned. She looked like she'd driven all night. Jesus, Monica, how'd you find us? I said, stepping forward before the detective could stop me. I called every hospital in the county, she said, voice shaking. You wouldn't answer your phone. I was going crazy. Detective Carter's hand went up. Ma'am, this is a police operation. You need to leave. I'm his sister. Monica snapped, then softened. Please, I just needed to make sure she's okay. Her eyes landed on Evelyn, and for a heartbeat, something flickered there, not relief. Something colder, calculation. I didn't see the SUV until it was already rolling toward us. Dark windows, no headlights, tires whispering on concrete. The first gunshot sounded like a backfiring muffler. The second shattered the driver's side mirror on the unmarked van. Down, Carter shouted. Everything exploded at once. Bullets slammed into metal sparks blooming against the van's frame. Officers drew their weapons, shouting commands. I threw myself over Evelyn, pushing the wheelchair behind a concrete pillar. The smell of gasoline hit sharp and nauseating. Another shot cracked, hot pain tore across my shoulder. I hit the ground hard, the taste of iron flooding my mouth. I looked up just in time to see Monica running, not toward us but toward the SUV. One of the masked men swung open the rear door, covering her with an assault rifle. She dove inside. The door slammed. For a second, our eyes met through the tinted glass. No panic, no fear, just something empty and final, like a door closing for good. The SUV peeled away, tires screaming. Officers fired rounds, pinging off concrete pillars, but the car vanished up the ramp and into the night. Silence crashed down, broken only by the echoing wail of an alarm and the hiss of a ruptured radiator. Carter crouched beside me, pressing gauze to my bleeding shoulder. You hit bad. Just grazed, I said, voice hoarse. Monica. I saw, the detective said grimly. We're pulling camera footage now. Evelyn was trembling but unharmed. Her blanket was peppered with bits of glass, her breathing fast. I reached for her hand and she squeezed weakly, one blink, then another. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. Carter's radio crackled. Unit 2 pursuit lost. SUV exited east ramp, plate unregistered. Possible switch car at surface level. The detective cursed under her breath, then stood. They knew the timing, the route, even the garage access codes. Someone fed them everything. Her gaze met mine. Your sister had your schedule right, medical appointments, transfers, insurance. Yeah, I said slowly, dread settling like cold water. She helped manage the bills after I lost the shop. I gave her my logins, the bank, the clinic portal. That's our leak, Carter said flatly. She wasn't worried about you, Kevin. She was their conduit. I shook my head. Disbelief collapsing into anger. No, she's not like them. She called to warn me. She called to keep you in place, Carter said, to make sure you were exactly where they needed you. The words sank in like shrapnel. Every reminder to let professionals handle it, every gentle push to put Evelyn in a facility, it all made sense now. Monica had been grooming me to give them control, one suggestion at a time. A medic finished wrapping my shoulder. I could still smell cordite, still feel the tremor of the shots in my bones. We're moving now, Carter said. New route, new hospital. They'll expect you to panic. We won't give them that satisfaction. As they loaded Evelyn back into the van, I caught sight of a security monitor near the garage exit. For a split second, the SUV flashed across the screen, Monica in the back seat, face half lit by dashboard glow. No tears, no hesitation, just resolve. Cold, absolute. I wanted to scream her name, but my throat wouldn't move. Instead, I let the officers guide me into the other vehicle. My shoulder throbbed, the gauze soaking through, but I barely felt it. In the rearview mirror, the detective's eyes met mine. "I know this hurts," she said quietly. "But this isn't just family greed anymore. This is organized, calculated." The nurse who vanished, Laura Benitez, wasn't just a caregiver. She was the first leak 5 years ago. Monica may have taken her place. I stared out the window as we sped through the city lights smearing across the glass. Somewhere out there, my sister, the woman who used to make me birthday pancakes, was riding with the same people who'd kidnapped Nina and drugged my wife. Blood family. The word family suddenly felt like an open wound I couldn't close. When the convoy finally stopped at a safe house outside town, I stepped out and smelled gasoline still clinging to my jacket. The night was so still I could hear my own heartbeat. I looked at my bandaged shoulder, at the dried blood crusted under my nails, and I realized something that terrified me more than the bullets or betrayals. If Monica could lie like that, if Evelyn's family could fake paralysis, if every truth I'd lived was manufactured, then maybe my whole life had been a con and I'd just never noticed the price of admission. The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was an old warehouse on the outskirts of Brenton turned into a tactical command center.
Rows of monitors glowed blue in the dark screens, filled with maps, names, and the kind of numbers that decide who goes to prison and who disappears. Detective Aisha Carter stood at the front of the room, her jacket-off badge clipped to her belt. Around her, agents in plain clothes typed on laptops, phones ringing every few seconds. The air smelled like coffee sweat and urgency. I sat at a folding table with my shoulder bandaged, watching my whole life become a case file. On one of the monitors, a diagram showed the money trail arrows leading from the Alvarez Medical Trust to shell companies I'd never heard of, Alvacorp Holdings, Northlake Renovations, Ascendant Construction Group. Next to them were screenshots of emails, bank wires, property deeds. This started as a family scam, Carter said, her tone clipped but steady, but it's grown into a full-scale criminal network. Rosa and Hector used Evelyn's trust to launder construction kickbacks tied to city contracts, over $3 million siphoned in 6 years. The list of co-conspirators includes a state legislator, 2 judges, and at least 1 deputy in the Brenton PD. I tried to breathe evenly. "You're telling me the same people meant to uphold the law helped destroy my family?" She nodded grimly. "And if Evelyn hadn't survived long enough for you to find those pills, they would have gotten away with it." Across the room, Lena Ortiz, the private investigator, was hunched over a monitor, her hair tied back, tapping rapidly. "Detective, I cross-referenced the GPS data from that old phone we found. Look here, recurring pings near Lake Ravenwood, about 40 minutes north. The coordinates match property records for a cabin deeded under Hector Alvarez's alias Henry Rocha." Carter joined, her eyes narrowing. "When was the last activity last night?" Motion sensor cameras caught headlights at 3:27 a.m. Thermal signatures indicate at least 3 adults, 1 smaller heat source, likely a child. The words hit me like a hammer. A child. Lena looked at me carefully. "Yeah, could be Nina's." My pulse thudded in my ears. "She's alive." Carter's expression softened. "We don't know yet, but we have probable cause to search. I've requested emergency warrants through the county DA. If the timeline holds, we move at dawn." She turned back to the team. "Notify federal partners. We'll need FBI coordination and a RICO framework. This isn't just kidnapping, it's organized racketeering. Interpol already has a red notice on Dr. James Varela. We believe he fled through Mexico to Argentina 2 years ago under a false identity." The room buzzed with new orders, officers passing printouts, names shouted across channels. I couldn't move. I stared at the wall of photos, Rosa, Hector, Monica, all smiling in family snapshots that now looked like mugshots. In the middle, one picture of Evelyn before the accident, standing with Nina on the porch, sunlight behind them. Evelyn stirred from the cot they'd set up in the corner. She'd insisted on coming even in her fragile state. "Kevin," she whispered, voice trembling, "I have to tell you something before we go." I knelt beside her. "What is it?" "They made me pretend. They said if I stopped playing the part, they'd kill you."
Nina found out they punished her, but she's alive, Kevin. I heard them say she was moved to the lake months ago. They kept her because she had the baby. I stared at her. The baby. She nodded weakly. They told me it was yours. Time stopped. I felt my heart slam once hard like it wanted out of my chest. My voice came out small. That's impossible. Evelyn's eyes held mine. You and Nina, before the accident. They knew. They used it to control me. I turned away, pressing my hand to my mouth.
6 years of guilt, confusion, love and loss, all twisting into something unrecognizable. When I looked back, Evelyn's hand was on mine. Whatever happens, bring them back. Both of them. Later, while the team finalized the raid plan, I sat alone in the dim light with a small brass key in my palm, the one the officers had found in my sock drawer. I turned it over, trying to place it. Then a memory surfaced. Evelyn's father years ago, drunk at a Christmas dinner, leaning close and whispering, "If anything ever happens, remember the numbers, 19-45-06. Back then I thought it was nonsense. Now it felt like a code. Maybe a safe, maybe the documents Carter kept talking about. I slipped the key into my pocket, a cold promise against my thigh. Carter called me over. "We roll in 30. You're not coming inside the property. You stay in the outer perimeter with the medics." "Understand, I understand," I said, though I didn't. "If there's a kid, if it's Nina's, I need to be there." She exhaled long and reluctant. "If we find them, you'll be the first to know, but you don't move until I give the signal." I nodded, knowing damn well I'd move if I had to. Lena caught my eye from across the room. "You sure you're ready for this?" "No," I said honestly, "but I don't get to be ready anymore." We drove out just before dawn. The convoy of unmarked SUVs sliced through the empty highway headlights, carving tunnels through fog. The lake appeared slowly, a black sheet under the first streaks of pale orange sky. Pines bent in the cold wind branches, clawing at the mist. Carter's voice crackled through the radio 200 yards out. "Thermal scan shows movement inside. 3 adults, 1 child, possible firearms." I could feel my pulse in my wounded shoulder. The van stopped behind a ridge. Officers moved into formation, dark shapes against the silver of the lake. From where I sat, I could see the cabin's windows, yellow light leaking out, flickering. Shadows passed in front of them, and then I heard it soft, almost unreal, a child crying. Every muscle in my body locked. Evelyn's words echoed in my head. "They kept her for the baby." Detective Carter raised her hand, signaling silence. The forest held its breath, and from the cabin another sound followed, the low rumble of an engine starting. Someone was still inside. Dawn came crawling over the pines like a wounded animal. The fog rolled low over Lake Ravenwood, turning everything silver and ghostly. You could hear the insects go quiet when the first order crackled over the comms. "All teams in position. Go silent, on my mark." I was crouched behind the second SUV, heart hammering like a war drum. The cold gnawed at my shoulder wound, but I barely felt it. Through the trees, the cabin stood 20 yards away, 2 stories of rotting wood and blacked-out windows. A generator hummed somewhere near the dock, the smell of diesel thick in the damp air. Detective Aisha Carter stood ahead of me, bulletproof vest tight over her jacket, night vision goggles perched on her head. "We do this clean," she whispered into her mic. "Minimal gunfire if possible. Snipers on north and west windows. Entry team Alpha on the front door. Bravo through the back kitchen. Confirm static, then quiet affirmations." For a moment there was only the sound of breathing, a dozen officers synchronizing heartbeats. Then Carter's hand went up. "Execute." A flashbang broke the dawn. The forest erupted. Boots thundered up the porch. The front door shattered inward. Shouts. "Police, drop your weapons," echoed through the cabin. A second later, gunfire answered. 2 sharp bursts, close range. My stomach clenched. I couldn't see much, only flickers through the smoke silhouettes, moving glass exploding outward. Then came a voice through the radio. "Suspect 1 down. 1 wounded, room clear." Carter sprinted forward, signaling medics to follow. I trailed a few steps behind, despite her earlier warning, my pulse drowning out every thought. When we burst into the main room,
The smell hit first cordite pine sap and blood. Hector lay sprawled near the fireplace, a pistol still clutched in his hand, a dark bloom spreading across his chest. Rosa was on the floor, moaning, blood seeping through her shoulder. Her face, once so composed, was raw, now terrified human. Monica stood near the hallway, her hands raised, face pale. "Don't shoot," she whispered. "I surrender." I froze. The same sister who used to braid my hair when I was a boy now stood there in the ruins of my world, wearing a bulletproof vest under her coat. An officer cuffed her and read her rights. She didn't resist. She just looked at me, and for a split second I saw it again, that strange calm in her eyes, like she'd expected this ending all along. Carter pushed past me, voice sharp. "Secure upstairs. Check the back rooms." A cry answered her. A small, terrified human cry. I ran before anyone could stop me. The back room was dim curtains, drawn, the air heavy with mildew and fear, and there huddled on a cot was Nina, her hair-tangled face, gaunt arms wrapped protectively around a little boy. "Nina," I whispered, her head jerked up, eyes wide and disbelieving. "Kevin." For a second, neither of us moved. Then she broke sobbing, clutching the child tighter. I dropped to my knees beside her. "It's me," I said, my voice breaking. "You're safe now." She let me see him. The boy couldn't have been more than 2, curly hair, brown skin, those same tired eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. He stared up at me with quiet curiosity. "Daniel," Nina whispered, "say hi to your dad." The air left my lungs. I reached out, hands trembling, and touched his tiny fingers. Warm, real, impossibly alive. He didn't cry, just watched me, serious and still. It was like looking at my own ghost as a child.
Behind me, medics swept in, checking Nina's vitals, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. She clung to my arm as they worked. "They kept us here," she said through tears. "Hector, he said they needed leverage, that they'd kill you if I tried to run." "It's over," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. In the main room, chaos reigned, radios squawking, officers tagging evidence, camera flashes popping. Detective Carter was already managing the crime scene like a surgeon. "Bag those documents," she ordered. "Photos, vials, syringes, all of it. Chain of custody from the first hand that touches them. Nothing leaves this site unlogged." An officer nodded. "We've also got child clothing formula cans and controlled substances, looks like diazepam lidocaine, and something compounded." "Good," Carter said. "This'll hold up in court." As they loaded Rosa onto a stretcher, she grabbed Carter's wrist. "I can talk," she hissed through blood-stained teeth. "Names, judges, contractors, even the bank." Carter leaned down. "You're not bargaining, Ms. Alvarez. You're bleeding out." But Rosa smiled weakly. "If I die, the documents die too. You want them? You protect me." Carter's jaw tightened. "Get her to the ambulance. Now." I stood by the door, Daniel in my arms. He was heavier than I expected, his head resting against my collarbone. He smelled like dust and baby shampoo. I hadn't held a child since my 20s. Across the room, Monica was being led away in cuffs. She didn't fight. She just glanced at Daniel, one quick look, almost tender, then back at me. "I didn't want this," she murmured. "They made me." I wanted to scream, to ask her how far back the lies went, but my throat refused. Carter came over her face, weary but resolute. "You did good, Kevin," she said softly. "They're alive. That's what matters now." I nodded, unable to speak. As medics guided Nina out toward the waiting vans, Carter paused by the doorway, holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a folded slip of paper stained with grease. "We found this in Hector's truck," she said, handing it to me. "Looks like part of a map and a number that matches a safe deposit record at Brenton Federal Bank." The numbers blurred as I read them. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Evelyn's father. Carter met my eyes. Whatever's in that box might tie this entire network together. But be careful. Rosa's right about one thing: these people have friends. I looked down at Daniel, sleeping now against my chest, and felt something shift inside me, a storm of grief, rage, and the faintest flicker of hope.
The cabin behind us smoked faintly in the dawn light, sirens wailing in the distance, bodies being loaded into ambulances. For the first time in years, I didn't feel numb. I felt alive, raw furious, and utterly awake.
They thought they could buy us silence, I said quietly. Carter turned toward me. Then let's make them pay for underestimating you. In my arms, the boy stirred, murmuring something soft. His tiny hand found my shirt collar and held on. The sun broke the horizon as we drove away, the light spilling over the trees like the start of something we weren't sure we'd survive. The house was exactly as I remembered it, the same sagging porch, the same oak tree out front that Evelyn's father had planted decades ago. But this time it was crawling with agents' cameras and quiet menace. Floodlights threw long shadows across the living room walls. The family home, once a place of laughter of Sunday dinners and birthday candles, now looked like a crime scene frozen in amber. Detective Aisha Carter stood in the center of the room, clipboard in hand, watching as the forensic team peeled back old wallpaper and marked sections of the fireplace. Evelyn sat in her wheelchair near the hearth, pale but determined, her right hand steady on the armrest. "It's behind the third stone," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "My father told me once. The truth lives in the fire." An agent loosened the brick with a small chisel, prying it free. Behind it was a dark cavity about the size of a shoebox. Evelyn reached into her lap and pulled out the small brass key I'd carried for weeks, the one I'd found buried in my drawer. Her hand trembled slightly as she fitted into the lock. Then softly, almost ceremonially, she murmured the numbers, 1945-06. The lock clicked. Inside the hidden safe was a stack of ledgers, old photographs, USB drives wrapped in plastic, and several envelopes yellowed by age. The faint scent of smoke and paper drifted out as if the past itself had been sealed inside too long. Carter moved in immediately, gloved hands, methodical. "Chain of custody starts now," she said to her team. "Evidence photo, timestamp, item numbers." Each object was cataloged, sealed, and placed in hard cases marked "Federal Evidence." I caught a glimpse of one open ledger before it disappeared. Names, dates, account numbers, and a column labeled Contractor Disbursements, State Infrastructure Division. The handwriting was unmistakable. Evelyn's father. When Carter finally closed the last case, she turned to us. "We'll take this straight to the prosecutor's office in Columbus. This isn't just family fraud anymore. This is systemic. We're talking RICO-level conspiracy." By the next morning, the world knew. A local newspaper headline screamed across its front page, "Bribes, kickbacks, and kidnappings." Small-town trust fund exposes state corruption. TV reporters camped outside the courthouse. Satellite vans lined the street. Commentators used words like unprecedented criminal enterprise and political earthquake. Detective Carter became a reluctant public face of the operation. Evelyn's name and mine were redacted from most official statements, but somehow the tabloids still found us. I watched the news from a hotel room provided by the state. Evelyn sat beside me, her legs wrapped in therapy bands. For the first time in years, she could lift her right foot an inch off the ground. When she did it, she smiled, small, tired but real. "They said I'd never walk again," she whispered. "You already are," I said. She laughed softly, and for a fleeting second we were just two people rediscovering what freedom felt like. But freedom came with guilt. Nina was living nearby in a safe apartment with Daniel. She came by one afternoon wearing jeans and a borrowed coat, her eyes shadowed from too many sleepless nights. "I need to talk to you," she said, closing the door behind her. We sat in silence for a while, the noise of traffic humming through the window. Daniel was napping in the next room. "I told Detective Carter the truth," she said finally. "About that night, about the baby." I nodded, unable to look at her. "You don't have to explain, Nina." "Yes, I do," she said, "because I need you to understand it wasn't a plan, Kevin. I didn't mean for it to happen. You were breaking and I just wanted to help." Then everything fell apart. Her voice cracked. "When they found out they used me, used him." I reached across the table, took her hand. "None of this was your fault. Maybe not," she said, "but it's ours now.
We sat there hand in hand while the sound of our son's breathing carried through the wall, soft, steady grounding. For a moment I thought maybe healing was possible. Later that week, Carter called with updates. Rosa had survived surgery and was already feeding prosecutors a steady stream of names in exchange for leniency. Monica, my sister, was cooperating too, her lawyers negotiating a plea deal.
She's flipping on judges, Carter said over the phone. Contractors, bank officers. This could unravel the whole state system if we move right. What happens to her, I asked. If she testifies, she'll serve time, but less than she deserves. I said nothing. I didn't trust myself to. By the end of the month, grand jury indictments hit the press. 32 people charged under federal racketeering laws. Among the names, one stood out, Judge Henry Lawson, the same man who had certified Evelyn's medical guardianship 6 years earlier. The story broke live on national television. Cameras followed agents escorting Lawson into the courthouse, his robe folded under his arm, face stone cold. I stood in my workshop watching it unfold on a small TV I'd hung above my workbench. For the first time in years, the place smelled of fresh varnish and sawdust again. I'd reopened the shop, trying to remember what normal life was like before everything burned. Then I heard the sound, a sharp splatter against the window. Red paint. It dripped down the glass in slow, deliberate streaks, bright as blood. Someone outside had thrown it, disappearing before I could see their face. Through the red haze, my reflection wavered, tired, older, but unbroken. The phone on my counter buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Somewhere in an office far cleaner than mine, a man in a dark suit lifted his phone and spoke into it. "Yeah," he said quietly. "They've got the files. We can't bury it all, but we can slow it down." He paused, listening. "Start with the witnesses, especially the Turner woman. Make sure she remembers who's still in charge." He hung up, and miles away, unaware of that call, I stood at my shop window watching the paint bleed down the glass, a warning written in red that the war wasn't over. The first winter after everything fell apart came quietly. No headlines, no police sirens, just snow gathering on the roofs of Brenton and the soft sound of my workshop heater ticking through the cold. I reopened the shop under my old name, Turner Woodworks, even though most folks in town now just called it the Miracle Man's place. They whispered about the scandal, the kidnappings, the corruption, but no one ever asked directly. They just brought me chairs to mend tables, to sand old picture frames, to fix. Maybe they came for more than furniture. Maybe they came to see if a man could really start over at 52. Every morning I'd sweep sawdust from the floor, open the blinds, and feel the sun hit my face, a small, steady act of rebellion against the years I'd spent in darkness. Evelyn moved to Columbus that spring. She rented a small apartment near the river and took a teaching position at a modern dance academy. She called it the Second Step Studio, her quiet way of saying life doesn't stop just because you fell once. When she danced again, reporters wrote about the woman who returned from the grave, but what they missed was the real miracle, how she learned to forgive herself. We still spoke often, no bitterness, no blame, just the kind of understanding that grows in the ashes of shared ruin. Nina and I stayed in Brenton, raising Daniel in a modest yellow house just outside town. The backyard had an old swing, a patchy lawn, and a maple tree that dropped leaves big enough to use as hats. It was perfect. At night, I'd sit with Daniel on my lap and read to him from the same book my father used to read to me, The Velveteen Rabbit. He'd fall asleep halfway through and I'd whisper to him, "You're real, little man, and you're safe now." The legal storm lasted another year. Rosa Alvarez was sentenced to 30 years for kidnapping, fraud, and racketeering. Her testimony tore down half the political network in the state. Monica, my sister, got 15. She cried during sentencing. I didn't go to court, but I watched from home. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak, she said only one thing: I thought control was power. I didn't know it was a cage. Evelyn wrote her a letter in prison, not forgiveness exactly, but something close. I couldn't bring myself to. Maybe one day. The indictments rippled outward.
Judges resigned. A few contractors vanished overseas. Others cut plea deals, trading names for shorter sentences. Justice wasn't perfect, but it was enough to make the powerful lose sleep, and that was its own quiet victory. Some nights I still woke up sweating, hearing gunshots in my dreams or Evelyn's whisper, "Call the police." But when I saw Daniel sleeping, when I heard Nina's soft breathing beside me, it reminded me why I'd fought so hard to come back. I'd learned something simple and hard. Vengeance doesn't always come with flames or bullets. Sometimes it's just the dignity of surviving long enough to see the truth stand taller than the lie. 6 months after Evelyn's studio opened, she invited me to her first performance, Resilience, she called it. The city theater was packed. She stepped onto the stage in a pale blue dress, moving with slow, deliberate grace. The same woman who once couldn't lift her hand now turned beneath the lights, like a wave returning to shore. When the curtain fell, I went backstage. She saw me, smiled, and walked straight into my arms. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. After a while, she looked up at me and asked, "Are you happy, Kevin?" I thought about the shop, about Nina's laughter when Daniel splashed through the garden hose that morning, about the way the boy said "Daddy" like it was a secret only we shared. "I am," I said, "not perfect, but I am." She nodded, tears bright in her eyes. That's all any of us get. That night I drove back home under a sky full of cold stars. Daniel had fallen asleep before I returned. I tucked him in, brushed the hair from his forehead, and whispered, "You'll never have to be afraid in your own home, son. Not while I'm here." Outside, the world kept spinning slower now, maybe wiser. Somewhere headlines would fade, names would vanish from court dockets, and new stories would take their place. But for me, life had become small again, solid, truthful, earned. And when I turned off the light, the workshop humming softly downstairs, I realized something beautiful. The pain had made room for peace. You know, people talk about justice like it's a finish line, but at my age I've learned justice is quieter than that. It's waking up every morning and being able to look at yourself in the mirror without shame. It's watching a little boy sleep, knowing he'll never live the lies that broke you. It's choosing to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. I lost almost everything before I understood what mattered, and somehow that's what set me free. So if you're listening, don't wait for life to hand you closure. Make it yourself, one honest day at a time. My name's Kevin Turner. I'm 52 years old, and for the first time in a long damn while, I'm alive.